Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Like a midget at a urinal, the Packers are going to have to stay on their toes. They hope to beat the Bears this Sunday. Now here's your host, Dave Kearney.
Oh, Chad, for whatever reason, that reminds me of Joey Fatone's birthday party in Las Vegas in 2008. I don't need to tell you why, but midgets were everywhere. But anyways, top of the morning. How you doing today, buddy? What's the weather like for you out there in Washington? It looks like you're all bundled up and ready to go for a cold one.
9 degrees right now.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
So.
It's gonna be a robust 47 out here today in western Wisconsin. At least that's what my weather predictor is saying, and I'm feeling pretty frisky. I'm going to sprinkle bonus degrees on the region today. I don't want 47. I'm going to take us all the way up to 50. How do you like them apples?
I like it.
What do you think you'll reach today? 12?
I don't know what our high is supposed to be. It's probably going to be in the low 30. It's high 20. I don't know. It's not going to be warm. I can tell you that right now. But all I know is I'm looking at my pewter, which is accurate.
Yeah.
They never lie to you. It says
Never.
9 degrees right now. But It does say clear. So, it's yin yang, right? It's clear. So that's nice. So there'll be a little bit of sun, but it's 9 degrees.
I'll take it. Listen, I'll take the clear. If it's chillier, then I'll take the cold plus the gray, because if it's chilly and it's clear, at least it makes you feel, if you're inside sometime, that it could be warm outside. All right, we're not going to spend our show talking about the weather this morning unless you want to talk about the weather in New England last night. The Buffalo Bills 24-10 over the New England Patriots. Chad, I know that, and it's funny. Joey Miller's like, guys, Mac Jones is trash. He was sending me some player props last night. Mac Jones going over 200 and some yards, and Joey's all over the place right now. But I would say this. Your prediction on the Patriots looked good for the first quarter. The first quarter, I thought Chad was going to be onto something. This Patriots team, they were going to be able to put a little bit of a fright in Buffalo. It did not work out that way at all. And to Joey Miller's point now, because Joey vacillates back and forth between Packers are going to win. Packers have lost this game horribly in the middle of it. Then to come back and be like, Packers are going to win. I told you this. Well, Joey, Mac Jones is trash. And, Chad, you and I have talked about this for a while. Mac Jones, to me, is never going to be much better than he was coming out of college. Like, that was about the ceiling for Mac Jones. His floor wasn't as low as some of the other guys that were coming out of the draft, because he's able to play in the National Football League to some degree, but he looks firmly like a backup. Mac Jones looks like a backup quarterback at the very best. And to see him yelling on the sideline, we need to throw the ball. Dude, you can't throw the ball. What are you talking about? You need the short game in order to keep yourself on the field. It's just, it's a wonky time for the Patriots. And if you're a fan of Bill Belichick, I want to ask you about this. If you're a fan of Bill Belichick, how much do those Brady years now wear on you? Because, for all of the credit that we bestow upon Bill Belichick, who is obviously a great coach, he was a sub 500 coach in Cleveland before Tom Brady. He has been a non-playoff coach, at least in a couple of situations without Tom Brady. Do we start to look at Bill Belichick a little bit less than? Not that he's not a great coach, but he might not be as great as people were extolling for so many years.
Well, I think that they're obviously going through a bit of a transition. Anytime you lose a quarterback of Tom Brady's caliber, no matter what anybody says, both of those made a good team, right? Tom Brady and Bill Belichick made each other. They helped each other. But obviously there's going to be some struggle there. I think one of the issues, more than Mac Jones, in my opinion, that I saw last night is the play calling. And when you have a defensive coordinator as your kind of de facto offensive coordinator, but you haven't really named him offensive coordinator, which I think is
talking about
weird.
Matt Patricia.
What did I say?
Yeah. No, you just said defensive coordinator. I was just thinking about
Matt Patricia.
Matt Patricia. Yeah.
Right. So when you have that situation, I don't necessarily think that works all that well either. So I don't know. Something last night just was a little bit off altogether with their offense. It wasn't just Mac Jones. And that's what we do as football fans. It's the easy thing to do. You blame everything that's negative on the quarterback and everything that's positive on the quarterback when it's a team game, right? It's collective. It takes all of those pieces. It takes your offensive line being on. It takes your and the running back, Stevenson's great. There's other elements to this, and then the play calling as well. And I think that the combination of all of that, not to mention it's the Buffalo Bills. By the way, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they're not bad, but this is where I go to my initial question. Do we maybe start to devalue Belichick just a little
No,
bit? So I caught this stat in the 38 games regular season that Tom Brady, Tommy, and the New England Patriots played against the Bills. Guess how many times they beat Buffalo? Just take a
I,
guess. Out of
I
38 times, 34 of them. I'll make it
okay.
easy for you. 34
Yeah.
of the 38 times. Now,
They didn't have Josh Allen all those times either, though,
no,
did
they
they?
did not. No, they did not. But 5 of the last 7 times, the Buffalo Bills have beaten the New England Patriots. Listen, I
Or
know it's
Stephon Diggs, or Sean McDermott, or you know what I mean. I mean, the Buffalo has
sure,
made changes in the opposite direction that the Patriots have made, and so obviously this is what happens in sports, right? Some franchises that were shit for a long time make good decisions and all of a sudden go in the right direction, and vice versa. And
but the tie that binds here is Bill Belichick as GM and as head coach. See, Bill got all this credit for being so fucking brilliant
I
while the
can't believe
best
I'm
quarterback
defending Bill Belichick.
all
I hate
time
the guy.
was
I hate
playing
this guy.
quarterback for him. Well, listen, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one for right now because last night it was not the first time I've seen Bill Belichick on the sidelines, and I've wondered, what the fuck is this guy doing? When he replaced Mac Jones after a series and then put in Bailey Zappi and then put Mac Jones back in, that to me was a real tell. This guy, I'm not saying he's too old to coach because Pete Carroll still runs up and down the sideline like he's 45 years old, right? So Bill's not too old to coach. But you sort of wonder if Bill, the genius that was Bill Belichick, is getting exposed a little bit now because he isn't with the greatest quarterback of all time. And Matty Ice is throwing up something here. I saw a story on Twitter. Well, that's where you should end that whole research. We saw it on Twitter. Then you must just go ahead and believe that it's true, Matty Ice. I saw a story on Twitter that Brady might go back to the Patriots next season. Fucking never happened. Never, ever, ever in 1,000 years would that ever happen. Brady would rather buy the Miami Dolphins before he'd go play for the New England Patriots again. I mean, seriously.
Well, and at some point, Tom Brady can't play forever, guys.
No, and he's not going back to New England. First of all, that's just not a thing. We're going to come back here on the Sports Carnival in about 1 minute, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. And when we do, I want to get our listeners, Chad, and our audience members prepped up for a little bit of tonight's Bucks versus Lakers game. We've got a Bucks slide from their victory the other night. We've also got a good friend of mine, somebody who you have never actually interacted with, Rich Ryman from the Green Bay Press-Gazette, joining the program at 8:30. We had to pre-record with Rich yesterday, but Rich is going to talk to us about Aaron Rodgers and what the Green Bay Packers, Chad, might be like financially without Aaron Rodgers. Stick around.
What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Hey, it's time for koozies, hot tubs, and jacuzzis with a big announcement for the next 2 months. When you buy a hot tub or jacuzzi, you get a pair of tickets for the Big Coozes Booze Cruise. Headed to Cabo. So sop that mop and then come pop a top with me, the Coos.
Sop that mop is a slang term for wet bush.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. Remember the difference between fiction and reality, Dave?
Okay.
Is that fiction actually has to make sense. Now, here's your host, Dave Carney.
Ain't that something, man? You know what?
Think about that. Really think about that. When you write a piece of fiction, when you write a movie or a book, any kind of narrative, it has to make sense. Otherwise, no one's going to buy it. And then think about our reality.
Listen, it made me think of another set of analogies closer to my heart. You have to have honor amongst thieves. If there is no honor amongst thieves, then you're in a real bad spot. And Bob Dylan famously said, to live outside the law, Chad, you must be honest. And you have to understand why that is too, if you've ever lived outside the law. It's a lot like fiction and reality. For young audience members like Rob Dog here in Stoddard, I thought this was appropriate to transition out of what you did. You gave us a piece of advice in the Todd Vercuzzi's Hot Tub and Jacuzzi piece about what a slang term is. A lot of young kids don't know that. You've also given us a little bit of Uncle Chad's wisdom on reality versus fiction. And here Rob Dog's talking about a lunch date. He says, Dave, I don't know if I should be sad that in an over-under, and this is really showing us how good gambling's going, in an over-under with his friends, and we're talking high school basketball here, they set an over-under at 50, and he took DeSoto to hold off Wazika Steuben. DeSoto loses 41-69, but obviously that's well over 60. It scored Rob Dog a free lunch date. Rob Dog, one thing I will say, do not use the term "sop that mop" on your lunch date. Don't use that one. You go ahead and put that one in your back pocket, and you wait for date number 3 before you actually bring that out. At least that's what, in my day, kids would do.
Yes. Well, yeah, and you don't want to say wet bush either. That's probably not another thing you want to say on your.
It depends on who your company is, but after 3 dates, fair. But on the first date, not so much.
I think if you're that young, I don't think anybody knows what bush is. Let's be
Probably
honest.
not. They're like, wait.
So Morning Wood says Chad's defending Belichick. I know. I can't believe you put me in this position where I'm defending an asshole, but I did. Our Chad's balls under deflated too. Yeah. Okay.
Because it's like deflating Brady's balls, as we all remember, which is one of the ways that you used to unkindly introduce me, the guy that deflated Brady's balls. But I also put Magic back in his Johnson. So that was okay.
Yes.
That was all right. Do you think that Tom Brady right now is, because he's going through this divorce, right? And he's playing football, so he's got to be pretty busy. Do you think he's even thought about the future of being single without Gisele Bündchen? I know that we're talking about Brady's balls right now, so it just kind of rolled. Do you think he's actually thought about that? Or is being a professional football player probably like the greatest distraction that you could ever have?
I think he's got so many distractions throwing their
probably
coups at him. I mean, he's constantly defending himself from just random coups everywhere. Don't you think? I mean, I read a story the other day, and it was just a headline, and it said all of these famous women, they're throwing themselves at Tom Brady.
Well,
so I think if anybody needs distractions or wants distractions or whatever, it's not that guy. He's got plenty of them.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
And I think back to Matt's point on that, him moving back to New England. Where do you move when you get old? You move to Florida. He's already there.
Yeah, you do not move back to New England.
No, it's too cold.
If I really thought about Brady playing again after this season, which I don't think that he does. I think this is it. I really do. I think this is Tom's last go round here in the National Football League. But if I were to bet that Tom Brady goes to another team next year that's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it would be the San Francisco 49ers. And not because Jimmy Garoppolo's not a good quarterback for him and can't win, but you'd obviously, I don't care what age Tom Brady is, you'd obviously take Brady over Jimmy Garoppolo most every single day, probably twice on Tuesday, because Trey Lance is a big question mark. You don't know what he is, and Tom's got history with that area of the country. I think he's actually from that area of California. So that would be the only team I could see him going to. I guess you could make a stab at the Las Vegas Raiders if they moved off of Derek Carr, who's owed no guaranteed money after this season. Josh McDaniels was his offensive coordinator in New England. You play inside. You play on the West Coast. That's a maybe. You've got no state taxes, and you're in Las Vegas. San Francisco or Vegas would be the only two spots I could see him going. But, and I'm not picking on you, Maddie, because I think it's funny. You saw it on Twitter. There's absolutely 0% chance that he goes back to New England because of what Chad and I actually got into a discussion about, not an argument, but a discussion about who's greater, Belichick or Brady. Do you think these guys are just pining is Tom Brady pining to go make Bill Belichick look better? Tom Brady already won this argument. He went to Tampa Bay and won a fucking Super Bowl in his first year, right? Like that argument is closed. When it comes to who's the greater, coach or the quarterback won this. He really did. He won this already by winning that Super Bowl. We've turned the page on that particular both
be true. Isn't it funny how our brains work? It's either one or the other. Can't both be true. Isn't Bill Walsh one of the greatest coaches of all time and Joe Montana one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? Can't that both be true? Isn't Phil Jackson one of the greatest coaches of all time and Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player of all time and Kobe Bryant one of the greatest basketball players of all time? I mean, can't both of those things be true? I think both of those things can be true. And again, you have me defending Bill Belichick, which is bullshit. It's a Friday. We should not be talking about assholes on a Friday.
Okay, let me change gears. No assholes.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind. We can keep talking about it. I'm just saying. I mean, think about it. I just think we're so binary, right? It's one or the other. It's A or B.
Yes.
It's Coke or Pepsi. That's the way we're trained. No, here's the reality. Bill Belichick is a great coach. He's proven that. He has the record with Tom Brady and without, in my opinion, before. You got to remember he was an assistant coach with
The
Bill
Giants.
Parcells. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
he has, his coaching tree that he came from and the coaching tree that he grew is pretty damn good.
Nick
And
Saban was an assistant of his.
And Tom Brady, I don't have to give his resume because we don't have all morning. Both of them are great. Bill Belichick right now is struggling. Tom Brady technically is struggling too. I mean, granted, they're at the top of the AFC South, but that's not saying much because nobody's above 500. So
okay, that's all fair. Here's what I would say to counter that point just a little, because we talk about who was greater. Before Brady left, it was who was, and this is why I'm bringing up this particular argument. The actual argument was who had more to do with the Patriots' success. Was it Belichick or was it Brady? Was it the chicken or the egg? I will tell you that Phil Jackson is a better coach than Michael Jordan was a basketball player. And the reason I'll say that is Phil Jackson
won. Ridiculous.
No, here's why I will say that. Phil Jackson won 6 championships with Michael Jordan. Well played. Phil Jackson won 5 more championships without Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't make
he had Shaq and Kobe.
Okay, but Shaq and Kobe won 67 games with Del Harris the year before and lost in the first round of the playoffs.
Well, I'm not saying that Phil Jackson, to me, is, if not the one of the greatest coaches of all time. I would say he probably is the greatest coach of all time.
That's what I would say too. And that, I believe, is without debate. Phil Jackson is without debate, in my opinion, the greatest NBA coach. Michael Jordan, in debate, is the greatest NBA player, because now you've got to put LeBron in there. I'm always a Kareem defender. We don't talk about Wilt because he just didn't age out to that particular era. But listen, you wanted to not talk about assholes, so let's not talk about assholes. Let's talk about the Packers and Bears. There's not a single asshole that occupies a space with the Green Bay Packers. Not one single asshole. I mean, the greatness and the just the overall sense of selflessness that we get from Green Bay Packer players, especially their quarterback, means zero assholes involved. But Chad, this is interesting. Who wins on Sunday, Packers or Bears? What do you think our Twitter followers at the Sports Carnival are saying right now?
Well, I would hope it's 50-50 because I think that's really what it is. But my guess is they're saying Packers because they're Packer fans.
They are. And it's not 50-50. As a matter of fact, it's not even close. It is 75-25. Green Bay Packers coming in on top of this particular poll right now.
I'm not that confident of that. I'm hopeful of that. I'm hopeful
of
that.
Not that confident either, to be fair.
Justin Fields is not playing?
From what we understand, Justin Fields is not playing right now. From what we understand. However, if Justin Fields plays, and I asked Rich Ryman from the Green Bay Press-Gazette about that, and we'll hear from Rich coming up in just a bit. If Justin Fields plays, I think there's no question that Aaron plays. As much debate has gone back and forth this week about will he or won't he. Aaron saying that he would be open to potentially not playing if that was what the situation ended up working out for. Then you could maybe see him play. Look at this guy. Is it Aaron's birthday today?
I know you mentioned the other day that it was coming up. I don't know what day it is because I don't really care. But yes, let's just pretend like it is. Yeah.
All right. Happy birthday, Rodgers. Happy birthday.
Okay. I didn't know it was his birthday weekend. Now this changes everything. I think that the Packers are definitely going to win.
Okay. They say it's your birthday, and happy birthday to you.
I don't know. This is a tough game. I'm telling you what. This week, game. If you look at all of the slate of games this week, this is not an easy week to be picking games, especially against the spread, because a lot of these spreads are they're going back and forth. If you would have got in on Sunday night, Monday when they came out, I think you'd be much better off than we're at right now. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it, and not that you shouldn't go to betus.com.pa and use promo code Carnival, because you should. I'm just saying it's more challenging. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I've got a play for our audience members that we'll reveal coming up in just a bit. I think this is a really solid play. I'm going to a teaser card once again, and I'll tell you what that is. But back to our initial thrust of Packers Bears and why you think they'll win now, because it's Aaron's birthday. I think if Justin Fields doesn't play, they'll probably be okay. But Trevor Siemian's not as bad as people think he is. He can still play backup quarterback and in a pinch start for the Bears. The Packers have just not impressed me recently, and this whole season unraveling right in front of our eyes has left me feeling quite less than optimistic about their prospects. And it looks like Eric from La Crescent said Fields is active. Okay, he participated full yesterday. Rodgers didn't, but Fields did. Okay, he's active.
And we're getting football questions, which, you know what? This is interesting you ask this Facebook user. Not to get personal, but Facebook user, that's what we'll call you. I like this game. I like Utah in this situation. And
I know you do.
That's just me. But where I saw the line was 3.5. At 2.5, ugh. 2.5,
Well,
yeah, I didn't like that. I liked it that I had a field goal to play with.
so let me see where we're at right now. It has moved. The line opened with actually USC minus 1.5. It's swelled to USC minus 3.5. It's moved back down to USC minus 2.5. The total on this
everybody's
one,
putting their money on Utah.
that's right, because everybody's putting their money on Utah. So the total on this one, 66.5, feels like a pretty solid play there. The thing that I will say about this, and
Over,
this just,
yeah, you would go over on that.
I would go over this one. Yeah.
I agree
The
with
reason that I like USC in this one, and I know that John and I talked about this, we both did yesterday, Chad, you, John, and myself. The reason that I like USC here has a lot more to do with old school, just looking at sports from a gut perspective than it does from any sort of analytical perspective, because all of the predictive measurements suggest that Utah wins this game. Like, all of the predictive measurements suggest that they win this game. I just think that Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, USC giving themselves a shot, because even if they beat Utah, the computer still says that Ohio State could take their 4th spot in that college football playoff.
They could. Yeah.
They have to win this game. And I think that
it's a
for
must.
a guy like Lincoln Riley, a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who is right now by far the front runner for the Heisman Trophy at plus, I think it's minus 2,800 is his odds right now. I think that USC wins. So my thoughts on this, and I believe this is Tony. My thoughts, Tony, are take USC minus the points, take the over. That would be my guess. But Chad, like you've said, Utah does give USC. I mean, they're just not a great matchup for USC.
Well,
they're really not.
The issue that I have, and I haven't watched a lot of Utah this year, I'll be honest with you. I watched a lot of USC. USC can put up points. Caleb Williams is amazing. They've got a great wide receiver core. Obviously, Lincoln Riley's, humming and all that. Defensively, they really can't stop anybody. So this is, again, where it points to the over to me. Yep. And then I just go by gut feeling, kind of like you said. I feel Utah here. But I also don't like 2.5. I like 3.5. So maybe you do a teaser with it, but I don't like 2.5.
Well, 2.5 takes away. I mean, at 3.5, you give yourself the cover of 3, right? Yeah. So you give yourself that extra hook point, that half point of the hook. When you're down to 2.5,
be a 3-point game.
Well, exactly. And when you see 2.5, what you're essentially seeing is getting closer and closer to a pick'em, which then doesn't really do you a whole lot of favors.
Then you might as well money line it.
You might as well money line it. And I do have a play for you guys coming up later this morning. Chad, before we talk about that, though, because I want to save that for the end of the show, get everybody ready to go again, betus.com.pa. When you sign up, use the promo code Carnival. You're going to put the promo code in the area in which it asks you, how did you hear about us, right? When you're going through your login, and I know Todd Vercruzzi asked me yesterday how to do that. When you go to your login or join screen, they'll ask you, how did you hear about us? Go ahead and click podcast or even put other. It doesn't matter. And then in that comment box, put the word Carnival. Speaking of bucks, do you know where a pirate? Oh,
where the pirate hides his Buccaneers under his bucking hat. Classic.
That's great.
Arr, that's a good. Like, you know what? One. Talk like a pirate day. Mine one was always.
Talk like a pirate day?
Yeah, mine was. Let's see if I remember. I wrote this joke a long time ago because there is a national talk like a pirate day. I want to say it was. What did the? Oh yeah, that was like. What did the impotent? How did the impotent pirate get his girlfriend pregnant? Artificial insemination.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go.
A bit of a stretch, but
that's okay. Dad Jokes 101 by Dave and Chad.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, Mr. Forrester, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks back in action, taking on the seemingly hot right now Los Angeles Lakers. Now, we all know that I've been fading the Lakers. Well, I've been fading the Lakers all season long, and I've stepped away from that recently because I said we would fade the Lakers until they gave us a reason not to. The Lakers have been covering spreads recently, except for that game against Portland a couple of games back where they lost on a buzzer beater. They were actually up by a couple. They wouldn't have covered that spread. But recently, the Lakers, even in defeat, have been covering some spreads. So that's one of the reasons that I've pulled back off of them. But tonight, the Bucks are back in action versus LA. This is a nationally TV spot, Chad. And for Bucks fans, the big news, and Jeremy P12 Foreman was texting me last night about this. For Bucks news, the big news for Bucks fans, the big news is this: Chris Middleton is back tonight versus the Lakers. Chris Middleton's been practicing with the team. Mike Budenholzer, Chad, the coach of the Bucks earlier in the week, was non-committal when it came to whether or not Middleton would play in this game. You and I had talked about if it could be before Christmas, it would be a boon for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. It's the very beginning of December. Chris Middleton will be back in action tonight versus the Lakers. And I think that, listen, the Lakers are a team that, as we said from the very beginning of the season, we're playing terrible, terrible basketball. But with LeBron James's injury, Chad, Anthony Davis taking over the premier scoring role for Los Angeles has been nothing short of spectacular. I mean, Anthony Davis right now is reminding you of the reason why the Lakers gave up Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, and first-round picks to get this guy, and why the Lakers won a championship with him. He's really good when he's healthy and motivated. Russell Westbrook looks like, as a bench brother, if you will, Russell Westbrook looks like he is actually finding a rhythm off the bench for this Lakers team. And since LeBron's come back, listen, this isn't going to be an easy game. However, the Bucks are favored by 8.5 points tonight on BetUS, which tells you that the money is going really heavy towards the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know that I play this game because, again, I don't like to put my money where my heart goes. I'm going to be very interested in watching this game, though. As you know, I grew up a Laker fan, but have become as big of a Bucks fan as there is in the state of Wisconsin. So I'm pulling for the Bucks tonight. I just don't think I'm going to make a play, but I'm super interested to see Middleton. Really, really glad to see Pat Connaughton now, after a couple of games, find his legs. Drew Holiday is, of course, one of my favorites, and Bobby Portis off the bench has been great. But to see Chris Middleton come back for the Bucks tonight, Chad, I think is a really important step. Milwaukee's got to play, not with their hair on fire this year, but they've got to play with the sense of urgency, because Boston, they are not fucking around. The Boston Celtics are running for it this year. And between Jason Tatum and Giannis, I think it's a two-person MVP race. I know that we talk about Luka, but Luka Doncic had a great game last night. They lost to the Pistons in overtime.
Yeah.
The Dallas Mavericks are 1-8 on the road this year so far, or 1-9 now after losing that game. The Celtics and the Bucks right now are the best two teams in the Eastern Conference. I'd go so far as to say the Bucks and the Celtics are the best two teams in the league right now. But this, for Bucks fans tonight, big night. Chris Middleton coming back and versus LA in a big national TV spot, man.
Does Chris Middleton start, you think, or does he come off the bench?
I think he starts. Yeah, I think they bring him back. I think he starts. Now, what they might do is put him on a minutes restriction, right? I could see Chris Middleton coming out for starting, maybe playing the first 4 minutes. This will be a national TV game, so there'll be extra timeout breaks, right? You get a timeout at under 6 minutes. That's a national TV timeout break. So I think that the Bucks, because of that, will manage his minutes, but I believe he starts. And I think that because, if you've got the guy and he's good enough to come back and he's good enough to play, you might as well put him in the rotation and then sort of manage the minutes coming from there.
Well, I mean, they're basically at full strength now. Well, not completely full strength, but once Chris Middleton gets to full strength, let's say, or playing condition, which this is actually perfect timing. Right at the beginning of December, we were thinking right before Christmas. So now right before Christmas, he may start to get his legs back.
That's fair.
And if he stays healthy and they're at full strength, I think that matchup between them and the Celtics could be really, really interesting if that reaches the Eastern Conference Finals. And I agree with you. I think both of those teams are probably the two not only best teams in the East, but the two best teams in the NBA. And I also agree that it is Giannis right now and Jason Tatum. But just the only reason I say Luka is because there's a lot of narrative building when it comes to this. And the narrative started last year and worked through all summer, where we were tracking, how much weight Luka had lost and how many beers he didn't drink and how many ice cream cones he didn't have. And so it's almost like they're pushing for him. They want him to be the MVP. And that has a lot to do with the disadvantage, as I said yesterday, with Giannis, is he's already won 2.
That is absolutely going to play into that.
A couple, it makes it harder to get over that hump. And the Jason Tatum story, I think, is great when you consider the coaching situation and where the team is. But either way, it's great. If you're a basketball fan, it's awesome because it just makes it more fun to watch that you have this going on, the two in the East and Luka doing his thing. I think the other issue with Luka is going to be their team's success.
Yeah, I think that, to your point, the narrative is always, if not the most important, one of the most important rolling storylines that goes through. When James Harden won his MVP, it was because the narrative was that he needed to win one because he hadn't won one yet. And even though James Harden, to my own personal estimation, never deserved to be most valuable fucking anything, except for maybe strip club patron at Magic City, that still was part of it. The issue you mentioned for Luka is going to be the team's success. Yeah. I liked what Kendrick Perkins said, Big Perk, the other day on ESPN. And shout out to Big Perk, because I had no idea he was going to be this good as an analyst. I love this guy.
I do too.
He said, if for Luka Doncic fans, you have to look at this and say, we can't move the goalpost just because your player isn't fitting the narrative of best player on the best team. You look at what Jason Tatum's doing offensively, defensively, Giannis offensively, defensively. You can't just move the goalpost because it's now not fitting Luka Doncic's perfect narrative, right? We have to take in that team success into consideration. And listen, Luka's young enough. He'll get himself the MVP at some point. I just don't think right now it's going to be this year. As much as the Vegas odds makers still have him as the top prospect to win MVP, I just don't think it's this year.
Did Mavericks just pick up Kemba Walker, or did I not read that correctly?
Yeah, they signed Kemba Walker, which let me give Danny Ainge some more credit. When they traded Kemba Walker for Terry Rozier, and actually I should give Danny credit. I should give Michael Jordan and his staff credit. They got rid of Kemba Walker without paying him and took Terry Rozier on. Terry Rozier has turned into a baller. He is really good for the Charlotte Hornets. And then, of course, Kemba has really had a hard time getting a job.
Well, Kemba had a knee problems, and he said, he's not been healthy, but
No.
I think he'll definitely be an asset and possibly benefit not only the team, but Luka a little bit. But I don't think it's going to be. It would have been a much better deal about 5 years ago.
Yes, it would have. If you could have drafted him out of UConn, that would have been the time to get him, guys.
Sure.
All right, boys and girls, stay tuned here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. And thanks in part to our friends, Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate, Preferred Insurance, Tony, Brian, and of course, the Midwest Mortgage Team, Todd Vercruzzi and Mike Garcia, Sean O'Neill, the O'Neill Law Firm, and Joe Sampson's Helping Hands Landscaping. Because when we come back for the first time here on the Sports Carnival, Chad, good friend of mine, Rich Ryman from the Green Bay Press Gazette, USA Today in Wisconsin, the Packers business reporter, will answer some questions for us. What will the Packers look like financially without Aaron Rodgers under center? How much of an impact will that be? And Chad, essentially, what are Rich's thoughts about the Packers sitting Rodgers for the remainder of this season? We got a lot left to come here on the Sports Carnival. Stick around. Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest Mortgage Team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest Mortgage Team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest Mortgage Team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Rich Ryman, Green Bay Press Gazette, USA Today in Wisconsin. So glad to have you on the Sports Carnival for the very first time. Rich, this is the first time we've ever actually seen each other face to face. You're a good-looking guy, man. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. How's life been, Rich, since last we spoke? Everything good in your world? Family healthy, all that kind of stuff?
It's been good in my world mostly. I got to go to London for the Packers game there, and game notwithstanding, everybody was having a great time and it was fun. Everybody's healthy so far. The strangest thing is just how fast this season has seemed to go.
Yeah, no kidding. Already into week 13, Packers 4-8. You mentioned that London game, Rich. I was looking at that game, and I told all of our audience members before that game kicked off that I was expecting to see a sea of green and gold. And you know what? That's kind of the way it worked out. There was a lot of Giants fans there. The Giants are another blue blood NFL franchise. But with your own two eyes and with your own two ears, what was your takeaway? Was there more Packer fans than Giants fans there?
Well, it certainly seemed like it to me. I saw a handful of Giants fans. I didn't get into the stadium on game day because I was at different watch parties, but around central London, it was Packers fans everywhere. I got there Friday, and on Friday, it was a lot of Wisconsin and U.S. Packers fans. Okay. On Saturday, there were a lot of international Packers fans because they had gotten off work and were showing up.
it must have just been a really, really cool experience. And Rich, I know we had talked about the Green Bay Packers putting together this trip. They were essentially forced into going overseas for the first time during the regular season. And we talked about why that was. The Packers had been loath to give up that home game because of the split that goes back many years. Do you think that after the game and the success of the game itself from a viewership perspective, do you think the Packers are pretty much from a business perspective glad that they were forced to finally do this? Did it work out, do you think, well for the team overall fiscally?
I think as well as anybody could expect, they don't make much profit on a trip like that, but the NFL does cover their expenses. We still had 8 regular season home games this year. What we lost was 1 preseason game, essentially. And preseason games aren't as fiscally beneficial as a regular season game. So that's about as well as you could come out in this whole process. And I think the Packers themselves were pretty happy about going over there. I know the fans were. I've never seen Packers fans as excited as I saw of those that I met in London.
See, that really surprises me because there was no real beach to speak of. There was no real Mai Tais to speak of. You're over there having spotted dick and some really crappy, overall weather. But then you've got Packer fans really excited. To me, though, it looked like a Packer. It looked like a Packer home game. It really did. I thought it was a really good showing for green and gold fans, and it was kind of like I expected. I thought that that's what we would see, and it's good to know that that wasn't just completely like my viewpoint of it.
No, it was for real, a very large Packers crowd, and as I said, not just U.S. people, though there were thousands of them, but also from Norway and England and Germany and Sweden, and I mean there are Packers fans all over Europe, and Europe's a small place. It didn't take them a lot of effort to get from wherever they were to London.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a lot smaller. It's like driving across several of our states, if you really think about it. The success of the Europe games, I've got to imagine, is going to drive the NFL for more expansion. And I don't know that Roger Goodell has laid out any of these plans or that you would have knowledge of that. But after I saw the Munich game and the amount of fans that came out for that Munich game, and of course, Munich's got history back with the NFL Europe. But do you think that, Rich, at some point in the future, and I'm talking next 5-10 years, we're going to see a real push by Goodell and some of the other owners in this league to put a franchise overseas, or is that still a bridge too far?
Well, they've talked about it, and there's been talk that they wouldn't do 1, they'd at least do 2, so that when
Makes
a team
sense.
went over, they'd play 2 games, or when those teams came to the U.S., they could play more than 1 game at once. So that would make some sense. Whether it be in England, England seems like it would be the first place they'd go. But I think from what I gather and even hearing Packers talk and Packers fans talk, Germany is pretty well thought of as a football place as well. So it could be either or both of those.
I would just be worried about this. And I know that the NBA and Major League Baseball deal with this on a regular basis. What about the tax rate that would have to be paid? See, this is the one thing that I don't know that a lot of folks think about. You're talking about an American worker having to go to a foreign country and essentially possibly pay a really onerous professional income tax because the structures are just way different. I almost wonder if that's going to be one of the things that keeps the NFL out of Europe for a longer time, is that tax structure, because it would be hard to convince somebody to go there and take half of their salary in a salary cap league just to play there.
Right. And also you've got who knows how many other EU regulations too. If they were in Germany, for instance, now England's not part of the EU anymore. So
True.
So there's all kinds of legal complications involved. It's not like just, you put your football down on the ground and you start playing.
No, we saw that with the NHL and Major League Baseball during COVID, right? I mean, essentially you were up here or you weren't, and that's just how it was going to go. So it seems like that would be a longer way off than not. But listen, the way things move in today's day and age, you just never know. And Rich, that's what I want to kind of use as a transition point here. If you're just joining the Sports Carnival now, we're talking to Rich Ryman, Green Bay Press, Gazette, and the USA Today in Wisconsin. I want to talk about the pivot potentially from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Look, at some point, the Packers are moving off of Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to play forever. Bart Starr didn't. Brett Favre didn't. Neither will Aaron Rodgers. but we don't know if that'll be next year or the year after. Rodgers has got a contract, which feels, Rich, pretty hard to get around. But the Packers are being, I don't know, given or gifted or presented an opportunity now with Rodgers being both injured with his thumb and his rib to see what Jordan Love is possibly like. Let's just say the Green Bay Packers did find out that Jordan Love was the guy, and they did move on from Aaron Rodgers. What do you think, from your perspective, that would do to the Green Bay Packers from a business standpoint?
If they moved on to Jordan Love and they were confident that he was the guy, I don't think it would have a great deal of effect on the Packers' financial situation at all. Packers fans are still going to show up. The season tickets are still going to sell out. And if they win, and that's kind of the key to this, if they win, things will go on just as they are.
That's fair. I guess when you think about the Packer fandom, though, you see so many I think, diehard Packer fans that do not want to even consider the prospect of losing. Do you think that if the Packers did move on from Rodgers and had Jordan Love, and he had a rocky first season, which is very much par for the course, even Aaron Rodgers had a couple of those in his career getting started, do you think that the Packer fans would get more anxious now, Rich, because of social media, because of our instant societal nature where we want things not just now, but yesterday? Do you think that would do anything to affect Packers fans and their, I guess, patience with a young quarterback like Jordan Love?
Well, you mentioned social media, and I think that at least for those who are on social media, it might seem a lot more dire than it did when Rodgers first came up. I think we forget sometimes that there are tens and hundreds of thousands of people who don't pay any attention to social media. And so these sort of things don't concern them as much. But Packer fans, I think they know that getting three great quarterbacks in a row is a pretty much unheard of thing. So they're going to think about that sort of thing. And where do we go from here and what are our chances?
Yeah, that's one of those prospects that's faced a couple of teams here recently, the Indianapolis Colts, and they got lucky because they went Manning, they go Luck, and then Luck, well, it didn't turn out so lucky, and look at their problems. The Denver Broncos, they've had a dog of a time finding a quarterback after Peyton Manning, and really after John Elway. The Peyton Manning thing was just a bridge for a few years. It's hard to do in the NFL to get three consecutive Hall of Fame type quarterbacks, but I'm almost looking at this from, Rich, more of like an organizational perspective right now. With Aaron Rodgers owed the money that he's owed, he's probably going to be a Green Bay Packer next year unless something remarkable happens. There's $60 million guaranteed dollars on the table. That said, the organization does owe it to themselves to evaluate and value-ize what Jordan Love is, if anything, because before they go and pick up a fifth-year option that would cost this team around $20 million, and remarking that he's just in his third year now, but they've got to do that soon. I think that they would be foolish to not see what Jordan Love is right now this year when there is still a couple of meaningful football games left so that they can decide what they are going to do. Is that going to be trading this guy? Is that going to be, keeping him that one extra year and then moving on after Aaron Rodgers when he is in year 5? What is the plan? Where do you stand on that? And do you think that that's a completely crazy take?
No, I think, it seems to me like Jordan Love has been around longer than 3 years, just because he's been there. But I think they do have to find out, and he's the one who's in the worst position in all of this, because his future is up in the air, and like Rodgers, who sat on the bench for 3 years, Love might be a really good quarterback, but we'd all like to find out, and I think he would too. He was kind of tantalizingly good at the end of the game last week, and whether they were playing off a little bit because it was late in the game or whatever, he showed better poise and stuff, I think, than he had any other time he'd been in there, and I think the Packers and everybody would like to find out how accurate all of that was. And they kind of need to, even if Rodgers comes back next year.
Yeah, it feels to me like that is playing Jordan Love, at least for a couple of games. Let's not, maybe Rodgers just sits out 1 or 2 games. You've got Chicago, where I've jokingly remarked that Soldier Field is like the 3rd leading cause of injury in the NFL. So you've got a game against the Bears, which who cares if the Packers win or lose at this point? It really becomes irrelevant. The math is such that they're not going to make the postseason. It just feels like they need to find out what Jordan Love is. If he is anything at all, well, then it gives the Packers a little bit of direction on what they want to do with him after Rodgers. If they have to pick up his 5th-year option, they're going to have to make a lot of different concessions, though. That's going to require cutting different guys on this team because of the money that'll be owed to both Rodgers and Love. But it is something that they're going to have to figure out. And it just, I don't know. I would hate to be also Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur, who feel to me as an outsider hamstrung a little bit by Rodgers and this contract. I would hate to be in their position because, frankly, I would just be surprised if they weren't jonesing for a chance to get a look at this. Not that they want to push Rodgers out, because that's not what I think, but just because this gives you the best chance to accurately evaluate him. You can only do so much in practice. There's only so much that you can really find out.
Right. He's got to be in a game situation. And if you want to really find out what he's like in a game situation, somewhat like Kansas City, where he's the starter and the game is on the line the whole time to really make a difference. And, the advantage over the Kansas City start is that if they were planning on doing this, they could have a game plan that's designed for him, not for Aaron Rodgers, which would also show much better what his potential is.
Well, and it would also be a lot softer landing spot going on the road to play Chicago, as opposed to going on the road to playing at the time the defending, I believe, Super Bowl champion, or at least AFC champion, Kansas City Chiefs. That was a tough game, and Jordan Love obviously didn't play well. But at the same time, that was still a tough game. It's a tough place to play. I wouldn't want to be at Arrowhead Stadium to play my very first game on short notice. That wouldn't be anything I'd sign up for. But Soldier Field against a potential matchup against Trevor Siemian, I think I'd take that if I'm Jordan Love. And just kind of to wrap up that thought about Jordan Love looking tantalizingly good on Sunday, I thought the same thing. And I realized that the defense was playing prevent. I get it. I understand all that. But the look that he had on the sideline prior to taking the field, the look that he had when he went into the huddle, the command that I thought he showed was brilliant. And I thought that he and Christian Watson, good God, if you ever got a chance to see these two guys link up for at least a couple of extended drives, that can't be a bad thing. I mean, it just really can't. You've invested a lot in these two young players. Why not just give it a try? What's the worst that can happen? You go to 4-9? That looks like that'll happen anyways.
Well, and he looked like he had a lot of confidence, which I've never seen him play like that before. So, like Rodgers, he's in his 3rd year. He's got to be getting there. If he's got that talent and ability, it should start showing up now. And hopefully that's what it was. And even if he doesn't play against Chicago, if he comes back here and plays against the Rams, here at Lambeau, the Rams are not a great team this year either. That would be a fine team to, cut your teeth on.
Yeah. Oh, God, talk about a team that's just being bad this year, the Rams. I'd love to get a thought on what the financials are out there in Los Angeles when you go from Super Bowl to nearly the worst team in the NFL. That's got to be something. Well, Rich, I appreciate your insight here. Again, Rich Ryman, Green Bay Press Gazette, USA Today in Wisconsin, for joining us and, talking to us about the Packer situation. Packer fans, as long as there's a good enough team on the field, we're going for the party too, because I'd go to Green Bay now just to go to the Stadium View Bar and tailgate and then go watch the game on a television. It's that much fun just being in the city of Green Bay during a game day. So hopefully that just gets to continue, and really looking forward to talking to you again here on the Sports Carnival. Maybe next time we'll get you live in the morning. We don't have any real constraints now because we're on the internet. So we're easy. If you say something, wrong, then it doesn't matter.
That's helpful.
Yes. Yes.
I try not to say anything wrong, but you get excited sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. We've had interesting conversations on wordplay, word choices, and which words we're not going to use because we've decided as a society to retire them. We've always caught ourselves, but it is interesting to see how that goes. Rich, always fun talking to you, man. Appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your week. Go Pack, go.
Yep, you too. We'll look forward.
Okay, so our interview with Rich Ryman, Green Bay Press Gazette, USA Today in Wisconsin, didn't look nearly as choppy, Chad, when I was doing that yesterday. So the audio was clean as a whistle, but hey, if you were able to stomach the viewership of it, then
I didn't know my mic bled through. I apologize for some laughter. I'm glad I didn't make any mustache comments during that interview. But I
He's
thought
got
it was a great
mustache.
interview. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
thank you.
solid mustache. Yes.
All right, boys and girls, stay tuned. We'll come back, wrap up shop. I want to give you my daily play. This is a big one for the weekend, a 2-team NFL teaser. We'll talk more about our new partnership with BetUS, and some of the comments that you've been making here, I think, deserve a couple of moments. Stick around.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of OneTrust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of OneTrust Real Estate.
The Social Distancing Sport Association, or SDSA, presents guidelines to safer athletics. For example, when participating in basketball, remember the Harden rule. That's right, James Harden is a man ahead of his time. Number 1, when playing defense, that is if you choose to, keep 3 to 6 feet between you and your opponent. Never double team and always appear disengaged or aloof. On offense, be sure to isolate yourself from your teammates. Dribble the shot clock down, rarely pass, and finally take a 30 to 35-foot shot. This has been brought to you by Arm's Length Under Armour. Go ahead and play. Just stay at least an arm's length away.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival with this question. Do you think they have reserved parking for non-handicapped people at the Special Olympics? Just curious. Here's your host, Dave Kearney.
Wow. Well, there you go. There's Chad Forrester for you, as
What?
Neil was talking about. Nothing.
It's a legit question.
It's a legit question. And this is why when Rich and I were talking about this whole idea of retiring certain phrases and phraseologies, I was thinking about our conversation the other day in which we were given a couple of very good answers to, well, what if there were not enough? What if there were, I don't know. It was too many cooks in the kitchen and too many.
Yeah. Too many
you know,
commanders and guardians. Yes.
Yes. It was too many commanders and guardians. And that's what I think ultimately, Rich means when he was good enough to come on with us and do the radio program in the past. And now, of course, joining us here on the Sports Carnival. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, you say things that, again, to you have absolutely, they're completely benign. It's just as benign as saying blue or red or green or black, which can both be colors and names, by the way. This is another interesting thing we could get into at some point. But you sometimes just forget that what you used to say is no longer something that is said. It's just, and it's not because you had any, ill intent or you were trying to be negligent with your words or to gaslight anybody. I can understand why people in a lot of ways today, Chad, get nervous about speaking on these platforms and would rather take the pre-recorded route just in case there's anything that comes up. You're like, oh yeah, we stopped saying that in 1997. Like, oh, was that the year? Yes, it was 1997 when we stopped saying the Backstreet Boys were a good band. And because if you brought that up now, you would be laughed out of the room. You can't say that. The Backstreet Boys are, of course, not a good band. But in 1997, we didn't know that yet. That's when it got retired. So
I'm sure there was a couple of socially unacceptable things tucked away in that mustache that were hiding. So I totally understand why he chose to do the pre-recorded thing. But that also kind of tells you what the intent of all of that really is. It has nothing to do with protecting anybody.
No, of
Don't
course
let
not.
anybody fool you. It
No.
all has to do with censorship. It all has to do with limiting your free speech. So
Of course.
that you can be a good slave.
course.
That's really
Well-
what all this is all about. And don't let anybody bullshit you otherwise.
Listen, and kids that are in college, like Thomas from UW, who just mentioned that Matt Janis, good friend of the program, stopped by the Eagle Rec Center yesterday with a recruit. That must have been exciting. This, for you kids in college, is something that I want you to really ponder on, because I think for people that know me, and we've got a lot of friends here in the area, and a lot of people have met me, and I try my best to get out and meet as many of our audience members as possible, because they're just really cool people. But limiting free speech, limiting any sort of speech, even politically incorrect speech that you don't like, doesn't help your vocabulary. One of the comments and one of the more, I think, praiseful comments I've gotten through my life is my command of vocabulary, right? It sounds sometimes like I'm reading out of a thesaurus or something. But if you limit speech in any way, shape, or form, you tell people what they can and can't say, it limits your ability to argue with those people. Okay? That's what I feel is most important about speech. Giving you enough tools in your tool bag to argue with somebody who you know is wrong. And when you start to take away words, phrases, ideas of speech, there's a synapse in your brain that no longer becomes active, right? So limiting speech, again, college kids specifically, listen up here, is not a good thing. And like Chad said, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Remember that old saying, sticks and stones could break? Anyways, we'll go on. Joey Tropicana's checking in here. Hi, Joey.
I wanted to get back. I wanted to get to this because I saw this because it's addressed specifically to me for some reason. It says, hi, Chad. LeBron is going to make 3 dunk shots and 6 3-point baskets. And do you think Eddie Money is better than Huey Lewis? And
Good call.
That's a tough call. Edward Mahoney actually started out as a police officer in New York.
He did.
And later became Eddie Money. And of course, not of course, but
that's when he bought 2 tickets to Paradise.
I have never met Eddie Money, and I do like Eddie Money. Yes, he did buy 2 tickets to Paradise, but I have met Huey Lewis, who's a bit of a douchebag, but
sad.
very, very good. I would have to say Huey Lewis.
Yes.
Just because of the music. But I would imagine
answer.
Eddie Money is probably a better dude, would be my guess.
Yeah, I don't know. You introduced Huey Lewis on stage once. That was the thing. You actually introduced Huey Lewis on stage when they were coming out to perform. I would say the obvious clear answer is Huey Lewis in the News, and not just because Huey Lewis in the News, but also because Huey Lewis's post-news career. Like, I don't want to break the news to you, but Huey Lewis plays a mean harmonica, and he's also got some good pipes. He's been on a lot of songs.
Unfortunately, I think a few of the original news members are gone, and now it's Huey Lewis in the fake news, which is kind of ridiculous. When I intro, not to brag, but when I did intro Huey Lewis, I just got to tell you this, because I've introed a lot of bands. Most of the time when you intro a band, you get everybody hyped up, and then you go, they'll be on here in 15 minutes, and it's kind of anticlimactic. This time that I got to actually do this was at Mandalay Bay Beach. The Heart of Rock and Roll beat started beating, right? And I'm still in the middle of my intro.
Oh, I got
to say, ladies and gentlemen, Huey Lewis in the new. It was so cool. I was like, man, that was the coolest 5 minutes of my life.
Oh, wow. Well, that's what she said. Now, Chad, Jeffrey Zilke is checking in here this morning. I want to go back to this because while you bring up my daily play, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, I want to hit on something. We were talking to Rich Ryman, Green Bay Press Gazette. Solid mustache, great dude. Really glad to have him on today. So Jeff says the Packers are going to sign Jordan Love to a 3-year deal. That way they can kick the money can further down the road, offering more guarantees than just that 1 year, $20 million he would get under his 5th-year option. And Jeff, I think that's a really good call. The only problem in that is this: if the Green Bay Packers do not get a legitimate chance to see what Jordan Love is, why the fuck would they pay this guy anything? Because if you're telling me that he's not good enough to take over for Rodgers when he's got a punctured lung, so punctured that Rodgers took himself out of the game. Don't sleep on this. He took himself out of the game because he felt like he was potentially in jeopardy of injuring himself long term. He's also got a broken thumb. If the Packers don't give Jordan Love a shot now, they are not going to give him money. That's just the thing. If they don't give him a shot now, Jeff, they're not going to give him money because it would make no sense. It would mean that you know enough about this dude to know he ain't the dude, which means you don't pay him anything. Forget that. You've got to allocate resources to other areas of this team's quite dramatic holes. Now, that said, let's go to some good news here, all right? Because we're looking at a poll question at the Sports Carney and on our Facebook group page that feels real positive about the Packers. So we're going to end on that positive Packer note. People think they're going to win this Sunday versus Chicago. Swell. I'm not putting my money on the Packers this weekend versus the Bears. What I am doing, Chad, is making a 2-team, 6-point NFL teaser. This one I feel is about as certain as there could be when you're talking about a gamble. And the reason I say that is this. With a 6.2 team teaser, I took the Jets and the Vikings, Chad, to go over not 44.5 points, but just over 38.5 points. That's what you can do with a 6-point tease in the NFL. I also was able to take that 6-point tease and plus up Tennessee to 11 points versus the Eagles. Now, for purposes of fairness, I also made a separate play on Tennessee's money line plus 200 because I think the Titans win this game straight up. But in this particular situation, I feel very confident about the play. I believe that the Jets and the Vikings will blow past 38.5. And then Tennessee plus 11 versus Philly. This feels like as much of a lock as there could be on a weekend in which, Chad, you've mentioned, there aren't a lot of great lines just sitting out there for you to take. So this is my daily play. I'll recap this later on our TikTok feed, our Instagram, and all the other good social sites. Thanks to everybody for joining in this morning. I think Aaron Rodgers has got a new job, according to Joe V. He's going to be joining Joe Rogan and getting to the bottom of 9/11. Well played, man. Well played. Have a nice weekend, fellas. We'll see you back here bright and early Monday, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios.
Later.